spectrum frontiers. Riding hard, standing tall. From the heart of the people to the rise and the fall. Full spectrum frontiers. Where the stories ignite. Guarding tomorrow with grit in the fight.
And welcome back to another episode of Full Spectrum Frontiers. This is your host, Ben Tanton, and today we have Andrew Gault, who right now is the CEO of ZeroTier, also a founding partner at 7% Ventures. And I know there's one other too, but I don't have it right in front of me. So, Andrew, welcome to Full Spectrum Frontiers. Tell the audience who you are, what you do, and where people can
It's
find
great
you.
to be here. Thank you for having me on. Like I say, I'm Andrew Gault. I'm CEO
Absolutely.
of ZeroTier. I am a GP at a VC fund focused on dual use in the UK, based in London. And I am actually on a board currently, taking up some time with a SaaS company in Ireland, which might have been the third thing you were thinking of.
Gotcha.
I-
Yeah.
Yes, exactly,
Plotbox.
Plotbox.
Is that what it's called?
SaaS
Yeah, there we
software
go.
for cemetery, which
It popped
is
into my head.
even out of left field for me, and I work there. I don't want to talk about that. But
Super interesting, though.
It's one of these giant markets no one thinks about, right? There are a lot of niche markets, which maybe the TAM isn't trillions of dollars, right? Maybe it's, a billion or two, or even hundreds of millions. But these markets need software. And it's a very interesting challenge to a kind of the more broader markets that I usually operate in. But maybe introduce myself, how I got here. So I grew up in Scotland, or actually Ireland and Scotland. One of my first jobs was at the European Space Agency in the Netherlands at ESTEC. I was a programmer there, and worked on a bunch of teams and got into telecoms. And so I actually did a stint in Liberty Global, which is I describe as the Comcast of Europe, where I ran a bunch of projects through Eastern Europe through my 20s. And I think that's where I became a networking guy. Certainly worked with giant ISP. And from there founded Gaikai, which was video game streaming, which is now the PS Now service. Sony's PS Now service on the PlayStation. So that raising money for that back in 2009, as you can imagine, was particularly difficult, especially in Europe, that era. I think European VC has come a long way and is catching up with US VC, but back then it was the dark ages. So that's what brought me to the States. So I actually first came to Orange County, Southern California, ran that for a few years before we sold it to Sony for $380 million, raised money, I think $50 million from a bunch of VCs along the way. What's interesting about Gaikai is I would give talks and presentations at video game conferences, yet I'm not a gamer and didn't think what I did had much to do with gaming.
Gotcha.
I was a networking person, and the magic there was networking. So if you think about it, we would run a video game on a server in a data center. And this was before GPUs existed in the cloud, so we had to roll our own data centers. And we would create a live video stream of that video game, ship it over the network down to the end user, and all their updates, their left, right, their joypad inputs would get sent back, and all so fast that the user would see no latency, which was pretty magical low-level networking. Anyway, from selling that, got more into being focused on investing, and became operational with ZeroTier about 2 years ago. So to be clear, I'm not the founder of ZeroTier. That owner is Adam Miravenko, who started it back in 2013. First as an open source project, and has scaled it over that period. It's a very robust, reliable protocol at this point. And I came in to, I frame it as being more intentional about commercializing it. It was a very large project that was doing phenomenally well, great product market fit there. And now the last couple of years, we really focused on the marketing, the commercial side, the letting the world know how amazing and awesome ZeroTier is.
Yeah, absolutely. So you kind of touched on this a bit, but what were some defining experiences early in your career that really shaped the approach business and technology, your approach to business and technology today?
think, well, it's a good question. I think I learned the most of my career actually when I worked in Europe, because I was a consultant, so I wasn't on payroll, yet I was running a team of 70 people from 8 different vendors and had so giant corporation with the expected politics, but also no authority to tell anyone what to do in any way. And you still have to get stuff done.
Right.
So you still have to, it really teaches you how to work relationships and, both project managers in general, but people to get stuff done. And the other aspect to that is we were launching, it's going to be like a 3-month project, sort of a big go live over a weekend, usually in Eastern Europe. So I was for Prague, Bucharest, Zurich, and probably Budapest as well. At least 4 or 5 countries over there to go over and launch over a few days. And that's a high stress moment. I think we took the Romanian telephone network down for 5 minutes at one point during one of those go lives. So very high stress, very much in the middle of running that. And it sets one up well for startup life. Because I think there's an awful lot of hustle and high stress. And what I learned at UPC, some people thrived in that. So a lot of people, and some didn't. So some would join and they'd churn out within 8 or 9 months. And then there would other people that were lifers that had been there 6 years, thriving, on the stress and the kind of extensive projects across the line. And it set me up very well for startup life, which is very similar as well. It's a sprint, not a marathon in a startup.
Yeah, absolutely. So since you've got both, you've worked both in Europe and I'll just say Silicon Valley, the US, right? How do the startup and investment landscapes differ between those
Also
two?
a great question. So I will preface, I'm probably going to dump on Europe a little bit here, but it's gone a lot better over the last 10 years. So maybe I'll answer this from a 10 years ago point of view, but it is a lot better. I think
absolutely.
Oh yeah.
I mean, a lot's changed for sure.
Yeah, I think the key, I've thought about this a lot actually. I think the key is where the money comes from. So in America, there's very much, and you see it even just if you have a job with Americans, there's a bit of a hustle culture. A lot of people will have a second sidekick. And the money, the risk money for the startup, that capital is usually come from an ex-entrepreneur, someone who risked it, who thought about the upside. If everything goes right, how good could this be? And takes that bet and is quite happy with the risk that 7 or 8 times out of 10, it will turn into nothing and won't hold it against the founder, but it turns into nothing. We'll say, wow, you really tried well. Pat on the back. Okay, here's another check to go do it again. Europe, I think the money tends to come from ex-bankers. You're a VC over there. You're probably used to work in banking. And that's very much a zero-sum game, right? For me to win, you must lose, which is very different from, Silicon Valley, where either we're all going to win together or we're all going to lose together. And I think that, again, to become a VC, you're usually later in your career. So you probably had 30 or 40 years in a zero-sum game. You think a lot about the downside. The number of conversations I've had from a VC over there, working with startups where they're trying to put things in the term sheet to protect the downside. What if it goes wrong? Can I get control? And it's kind of a complete waste of time, because if it's going wrong, it's not worth your time to try and fix it. You should go and focus on the other one where it's going right. And I think that just that culture, as well, from the founder point of view, there's definitely still a stigma over there when something goes wrong. It is held against you for your next startup. And I'm sad to say I've seen several founders I think who were great, roll the dice, execute amazingly. It just didn't work. The market wasn't there. It just didn't come together. They did everything they could, and they keep, flogging the dead horse for 3 more years after everyone knew it wasn't going to work, to try and make it work, and to try and somehow save face or get past the stigma.
Yeah.
And you just don't see that in the US, right? You'll see someone, oh, you know what? We don't think it's working. Here's 10% of your money back, finding something new. And I think that that rapid cycle, together with the investors just getting that we're creating wealth. We will all get rich together. That environment comes together. I think that's why most of the major startups we can all name are US companies, right?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So, you've backed some transformational companies early on. What do you look for in a winning tech startup? I can't get away with this without asking that question. So,
a great question. And especially the stage where I tend to invest, which is pre-seed or seed. So first or second money in, which I will say personally, I love, because you are on the same side as the founder. And the later you get into the lifetime of a company, the later you invest, the more you're on the other side of the table. And when the going gets tough, sometimes you versus the founder, which I frankly hate. So I love getting in early, but at that stage, you're investing in a person.
It's almost like a partnership at that point, to an extent.
Someone who can just get stuff done, right? Who won't take a no for an answer, who will just change the world around them. And you start to get a sixth sense for those kind of people. So a great example would be Brendan Irie at Oculus VR. So Oculus VR, I'm sure you listeners are aware, they did, I think it was a Kickstarter to start off with, and that would have been 2012, 2013 maybe, kind of era. I think they did $5 or $6 million of sales on Kickstarter, and then they went on and sold to Facebook, to now Meta, for over $2 billion after, I think it was 20 months from founding. And Brendan actually worked for me at Geico. So I saw him in action, and Brendan, obviously incredible whip smart, very impressive individual. But when he decided he wanted to do something, or he was given a project to do it, it got done. And one of the symptoms, which I've actually come to recognize later in my career, is people who would work for him or be adjacent to his team coming to my office complaining that, I had this great idea, and Brendan didn't really listen. He went off with this, and it's kind of unfair. And that is almost a signal, obviously within reason, of someone who's just, I'm not going to take no for an answer. I'm just going to get this done. And you do recognize that in founders who come and pitch you. What's interesting is that same personality type is sometimes very hard to coach and mentor. That personality type knows what they want to do, and they're going to go and do it. And they'll listen to you, they'll nod, but there's there's not zero chance. There is minimal chance that they will just take as a yes and go off and do it. So it really is, in some ways it helps, because it allows, again, to make money in VC at the pre-seed stage, you have to do quite a lot of bets, and too many to be able to be on all the boards and really be intimately familiar. But the personality type that will win at that is also the one that needs the less handholding, or there's the least amount of value in doing that. So it kind of works out together. But yes, it's very much a personality type combined with a market. It's about the timing market. I think what a lot of people don't realize about venture and being a GP, your vintage, meaning the year you became active for that fund, usually there's a 3-year lifetime where you're actively investing per fund. That vintage matters more than you as a GP if you look back at the numbers of how funds do. And so if you were, key vintages in the mid-teens, 2015, 2016, or a little earlier when Chris Sacco was, working his magic, those are just amazing vintages. Whereas later vintages that COVID is a great example, 2021 kind of era. Valuations are enormously inflated. You could raise money for absolutely anything and in the same valuation. And now as valuations have come down back to earth, that vintage of fund, it's been much harder to deliver the expected return. So time it right. Of course, you'll never know if you timed it right without the benefit of hindsight.
Of course, right? It's always 2020. For sure. So just a little slight transition here, but with investments ranging across like artificial intelligence, AR, VR, robotics, and more, are there specific domains that you're more excited about right now? And why? Like what? Because it's kind of, I'm trying to get at where are we kind of going.
It's hard not to immediately jump to AI, right? There has been a absolute step change kind of out of the blue in the technology about 2-3 years ago. And it's something I've been tracking for, quite some time. My background is a programmer, right? I invest in what we refer to as deep tech startups because, I like knowing about the tech. I like, how would you do it, right? Almost what's the physics behind it.
Yeah.
So I've been tracking it, but it really, when OpenAI came out with ChatGPT 3, they really changed the game. And it's hard.
Yep.
There's two ways to answer your question, right? From with a venture hat on, where should one invest to deliver returns? And, where is technology going in the world? So I kind of answer this separately. Where to invest? The reason AI is so exciting and we're seeing such insane valuations is the market size. So I'm going to get these numbers directionally wrong, directionally correct, but I didn't prep this question. There's something in the order, of hundreds of billions, high hundreds of billions of dollars spent on software every year for almost any startup. That is your total addressable market, right? I'm selling into those. It's enormously huge, but it is somewhat limited. But if you think of just employment and the size of the market who people are employed, you're well into the trillions of dollars. So the potential market, if you can augment or replace workers, especially white collar workers, then the scale of the returns you could deliver are, 10 to 100x more than any other startup that's ever been pitched. Obviously, it's several leaps of faith to get there. And, there's a lot of work and we're not even sure about the timing, but that logic drives, oh, wow, I could for your pre-seed give you $200 million, right? 5 years ago, I'd have given you $3 million, right? There is logic driving that because the scale of the return. And some of these startups indeed are, scaling from $0 to 10 million in their first year, right? Can they sustain it? I'm somewhat skeptical at times, but there's that is why in some ways it's easiest to raise right now for AI, and it's very venture comes in waves and bubbles in the hype cycle. There's always the hot thing. There was VR, there was IoT, there was other things. I will here plug ZeroTier. So my day job is sell a overlay network, like kind of a type of VPN. Cybersecurity, that kind of connectivity tissue to everything, is the number 2 most invested thing in almost every bubble. It's just the last 20 years, I think it's just been the second most invested into thing, and everything else comes in as peaks and troughs. So there's method to me working in networking, and that's ZeroTier. And I think just where is technology going? I think so much of this comes down to power. I was actually a conversation with a friend yesterday. What is AI really? It is turning power into value, and it's almost raw, direct transformation. I'll tell you a story at Gaikai. So back in 2010, it would have been, and there were no GPUs, graphic processing units in the cloud. You couldn't just go to Amazon and rent them. So we were streaming video games, which need graphics. So I think at one point we had well over 50 data centers around the world, and we were building racks of servers and shipping them out. And I own the spreadsheet for those racks of servers. And I'm I'm a spreadsheet nerd, as I'll confess to being that. And I had everything in there, like to the foot of Ethernet cable and its cost, right? This was a very highly detailed and optimized spreadsheet. And then we did some sensitivity analysis on it. It's like, well, what if I, put the internet connectivity to zero, the actual bandwidth didn't really make much difference to the spreadsheet. What if I put the capital expenditure, like how much I give an Intel CPUs? What if I put that to zero? Didn't make much difference to the spreadsheet. The only thing that mattered in that spreadsheet was the cost of power per kilowatt. If you could make that 10% cheaper, everything just collapsed. If you went up, you were kind of screwed. And at that point, we realized, why am I wasting time on the spreadsheet, right? Just, what's the most expensive CPU Intel will ship me? Great, I'll buy it. Like, what's the best GPU? Great, future-proof, I'll buy it. And there's just no point worrying about it. And that's just a cash flow problem. Not really an investment problem. And I think it's funny now to see it. Well, maybe perhaps ironically, AI uses GPUs for a different reason, but it's the same kind of math. It is 100% the same thing, right? It's where can I find the power? And you see these charts of the amount of power China's had come online in the last 10 years. I think they're pretty scary, right? The US, at least in the West, used to do pretty well. If I look at, again, I'm involved in a fund in the UK, and I look at the cost of power in the UK for businesses, I think it's the highest anywhere in Europe, right? Even higher than Germany. And politicians talk about we've got to win the AI game. Well, it's actually pretty simple. Just have the cheapest possible power. You don't really have to do anything else. The market, a market is like water flowing downhill. Have the cheapest power and the AI will come to you.
Yeah. In a previous life, I was in the nuclear industry. So I used to just push and push to build more plants, frankly. But regulations, and it was just an awful time at that time. It was hard to, nobody wanted to hear it. So now people are starting to talk about it again in the US, but, there's some things on the horizon that are looking good. Possibly the problem is you have to have runway because it takes too long to build these things. So even the small ones that they're talking about, but they're still theoretical. So either way,
I think
that's
France
a problem.
has done it well, but a lot of the West is, it's an own goal. The environmentalism and, let's, reduce CO2, that whether you're for or against that, that was the perfect reason to lean into nuclear. And we didn't, right? We collectively decided to lean into other things. And with hindsight, maybe not the smartest move if you believe in the end,
sure.
AI is coming and there might, we might meet, or might get where everyone thinks it might get to, then
the company I worked for was 49% owned by French company, the electric company of France. So essentially, but that was in a previous life. So, so just transition a little bit to ZeroTier. So ZeroTier focuses on secure network overlay technology, right? This you've talked about. So what's a practical explanation of what that is, and why does it matter today?
So I'll start with an example. So my phone, I put down on my desk here, is about 8 inches away from my laptop. And my phone may or may not be on the Wi-Fi now, actually, not sure. But assume it's not for my example, right? So we're 8 inches away in the real world. And to make this point, a few months ago, actually on a customer call, I trace routed the internet path between them, and it was 4,000 miles. So I'm in Portland, Oregon. I think the route went through Seattle and Idaho and back through Vegas, the giant circle to connect,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
And it works. It's, you ask the layperson, no one thinks about their networking, right? It just works until it doesn't. But in general, it works very well. And that big circular path, I believe my memory is correct, there were 13 hops along the way. So my traffic went to a router or a server and onto another, passed on 13 times. And I think of that as it's brittle, right? It's, it works when it works, but if one of these systems, it goes down, you have a major problem. And of course, if one of these systems is hacked, you have a potential man in the middle. I think it's a no problem. There are a lot that we use existing cryptography out there to kind of try and limit that. But there are a lot of, you're only as secure as the weakest link in the chain. And there's a lot of links in that chain. So what ZeroTier does, and I think the easiest layman way to explain it, is it simulates with cryptography basically an Ethernet cable, a direct Ethernet cable between my phone and the laptop. And the actual traffic, yes, it will still do the big roundabout route, but because of cryptography, I literally don't really care if one of those servers was hacked in the middle. There's no way they can see my traffic. And again, if you visualize the Ethernet cable, let's try and hack an Ethernet cable. I mean, it's pretty secure, pretty hard to do, right? And I think that point-to-point, fully end-to-end encrypted tunnel that we provide, and of course we allow you to scale it up to tens of thousands of devices, trivially easy. There's a web-based interface where you can enable a network in literally seconds, 2 or 3 max clicks. We bring the network up, we can bring it down. There's a huge, speed advantage there. But I think that direct encrypted tunnel, it gives you so much kind of security as a side effect. And I will be honest, I think talking a little bit for Adam, the founder here, he was trying to solve a connectivity problem. He, 12 years ago was dark distant past in networking. But he was trying to, this is stupid. I just want it to look like one direct connection. And in doing that and making something that magically works, security was this enormous kind of side effect almost. The attack surface area from that connection collapsed from, 5 or 6 different network layers, multiple virtual layers, 13 different servers, everyone having to be patched. It collapsed down to really just the operating system's IP stack on the 2 bad devices, which is pretty low level and pretty robust. I mean, if your operating system IP stack's screwed, then you're screwed, game over no matter what, right? It's kind of, it just leveled up the security and the ease with which you can build that connectivity so much. I think, and I maybe throw out a couple of examples here, which I think you might be relevant. So we are self-healing. So Adam, I'm in Portland, actually. Adam is at Cincinnati, Ohio. He came over to visit for a work trip a few months ago. He got on the plane. I can't actually remember which airline it was. No, I won't say. But he came on and connected to Wi-Fi and didn't pay, and ZeroTier got out, right? It just appeared on the local network like he hadn't moved at all. And we have other use cases that drones, again, leaning into kind of national security angle. There are places in the world right now where you have drones, a matter of life and death, and they're being piloted with a live video stream. And these drones, there is a nation state trying to block that feed. And as a result, the drone manufacturers, we've all seen the fiber optic wire. We'll have multiple SIM cards potentially, maybe there's a Starlink if the drone's big enough. There's many redundant ways of trying to keep that link up. And if you use something like ZeroTier, you really don't need to think about it. We will find the physical link that works and we will hop to it and we'll give you that super secure, effective Ethernet connection. But the long-term mascot for the company is actually the target rate, because it's basically indestructible and impossible to kill. So, yeah.
Well, how do you see networking cybersecurity evolving in response to AI and edge computing trends?
I think the internet today has, 18 billion connections on it. I think obviously depends which analyst you read,
Something
obviously,
like that, yeah.
and how do they get the number? I don't know, but that's that. You Google it, you'll get that, and that's primarily driven by humans, right? There's about 7-8 billion humans. Even if you buy networking tools, they're sold by the seat. And implicit in selling a seat is you're selling for a human. And when, again, these analysts talk about the number of devices, they talk about the average human has 3 devices. We think in another 10 years, the average human will have 7 devices. And it's all very human centric. And I think, frankly, it's just completely backward, right? If I think forward 10 years, the internet's not going to be for humans, right? We've got all these AI agents. It's like AI is bringing up, right now, my phone, I've here Siri kind of sucks, isn't really an AI agent. But 10 years from now, will I even type in this phone? Will it not just basically be an AI in my pocket? The internet will be for the AI tools.
Yeah.
And already, if you Google internet connected devices, 2030, 50 billion, it seems to be what you'll come to. So an enormously large number. If you pick and choose your analyst, you can get it over 100 billion, right? People shopping for the highest number. And I think it might actually be low. All these AI agents, these headless devices, they need connectivity. And the scale is unfathomable to me, but also the criticality of that networking goes to the roof. So right now, my internet goes down. It's really annoying. I can't FaceTime my family if I'm on a trip. I can't, Slack's gone down, it sucks. But 10 years from now, my car might be driving down the freeway at 75 miles per hour with my kids in the back seat and no adult. And I really hope the internet doesn't go down for that car, right? That car it's a type of IoT. It's a drone. I say the word drone, we all think of like flying drones, right? I think of IoT, we think of a 10-cent sensor stuck on a wall somewhere. But that car is both a drone and an IoT, but it's a $100,000 potentially IoT device with lives depending on it, right? So the scale and the criticality of the challenge explodes. And I think networking in general is one of these things that hasn't moved on, right? You as a user, I think, or any of your listeners, I'm sure they've opened up the network settings in Windows or Mac OS, and they're familiar with the term IP address,
of course.
right? Now, almost any other aspect of computing, think about what it was like in the 90s, right? It's completely unrecognizable. The terms, the ease of use. Why do you need to know the term IP address today? What is an IP address? It is a location in a kind of like internet space. It's a geographic space. It's kind of internet space, and it tells you the location in that space. Something like ZeroTier uses cryptographic identities, and it does the magic for you. So every device in the ZeroTier network or a software overlay has a unique identity, and it's cryptographic, so you can't guess it, you can't fake it. All we have to do on our control plane website, you list the identities you want in the network. You click go. They're in a network. Doesn't care where they are in the world. Doesn't care if one of them gets on a plane. It connects to the Wi-Fi on the plane. It's just in a network. And to me, that is the obvious step forward that networking just should do. I think, it sounds corny to say, but I do think the world would be a better place if everyone used an overlay network, preferably ZeroTier, but at least one of them, right? Because it would be so much easier for layman. There will be so much security as a side effect. And then when I think forward, 10 years, I don't see how else we can do it, because just scaling to 50, 100 billion devices and the not having self-healing and automatically falling back between redundant physical links is just it's untenable in that car situation, but I mean, we could sit here and think of another 20 situations quite easily. So,
yeah. Wow. Oh my gosh. It's expanding just crazy. It's almost unfathomable. I mean,
yeah,
it's not, but you know what I'm saying. It's just
yeah.
like wild.
Something
So,
like, I'll just lay onto that. I was reading a Gartner report yesterday. 2/3 of all networking tasks are still today. It's network engineers. It's like the technology is still in the 90s, but it's still managed and run and set up and built like the 90s, right? And that blows my mind, right?
yeah.
Are we
Wow. Yeah, it does a little
are we
bit.
really going
You're
to have
right.
10 times the number of network engineers in
That's
10 years?
wild.
It's like, no. It's like something's going to have to change.
I mean, that seems
Yes.
quite inefficient, right? Yeah. Absolutely. So with that, we deal with a lot of manufacturing stuff too, and it's one of the things, especially bringing a lot of stuff, like whether it's semiconductors and stuff like that. Is a lot of what we focus on is bringing that manufacturing to the United States, right after our shortfalls
Yeah.
that we've had for years. So, given your work across tech and venture, how do you view that intersection between innovation and like broader economic trends, especially with manufacturing and supply chains? Plus, it kind of helps that you've been in that you've done business in both Europe and the US. So it's that whole manufacturing supply chain. I think you have a unique view at it.
I think probably better suited to innovation. I'm definitely a software guy, right? And I think the reason, I mean, we're talking earlier about it comes down to power, right? I think that obviously feeds into manufacturing as input. I mean, in fact, I mentioned that the UK is the highest power. I read cost. I read that stat in an article about manufacturing fleeing the UK, right? It's the input
Right, there you go.
to
Yeah.
everything, right? And then it's,
Yeah.
it's capital, right? Where does wealth come from? Back in the day, it's not a zero sum game, right? I poo-pooed, the European mindset and capital because it's come X finance and zero sum. Ultimately, new wealth was created, right? And we don't, as a rule, dig it up out of the ground as nuggets of gold anymore. The wealth comes from innovation,
Yeah.
right? Before Facebook, what's Facebook's market cap right now? A couple of $1 trillion. Before Facebook existed, that was $0. And now, whether you're, pro or against social networking, or, you're pro or against adverts and Meta, there is an additional couple of $1 trillion of wealth in the United States, which we all get a little piece of, right? So the innovation, that is a feedback loop. And that is, that's why our economy is so much better than your economy. I say our as a naturalized American now. I should probably say that.
No, I hear you.
And as for manufacturing, I think I worry a lot. It's good that it's getting the attention, put it like that. I worry that a lot of the both tariffs and bills to force investment smells a lot to me like what Europe tries to do to move their venture market forward. It's like we could improve our venture market in Europe by getting rid of a ton of red tape so that small VC funds aren't regulated as if they were $10 billion. Here in the US, you fund less than 100 million. There's basically no regulation, right? To all intents and purposes. KYC rules, they're pretty simple. In Europe, ZeroTier has a Dutch subsidiary, wholly owned. It took 7 months of KYC to open a bank account for that subsidiary, right? So I think if Europe wanted to improve the creation of startups, don't spend billions of dollars trying to like dollar for dollar match investment or run all these programs. Just ease up on some of the KYC so you can open a bank account and you can do not 7 months, right? It's pretty easy. I think manufacturing is harder. It's been less of an old goal, I think, in the West, but coming up with all these programs to kind of subsidize, I have learned that is incredibly inefficient, very hard, frequently doesn't get the result you really want.
Yeah.
Again, it's like, a market is water running downhill. You want AI to come, just have cheaper power. If you want manufacturing to come back, it just needs to be cheaper here. And that needs to be in terms of power,
Yeah.
power,
Great
raw
point.
resources showing up. It's kind of take your pick for your specific use case. But until that happens, it's going to be very hard to change the way the water wants to run.
Absolutely. So, kind of going to like leadership principles. All right. Do you find what leadership principles do you find most critical when building teams that can weather like disruption and uncertainty? There's a lot of that happening right now.
What a broad question. I'm trying to think.
Yeah, no, well, you brought it. I mean, it kind of peaked when you brought up if we build it, they will come kind of thing. But the problem is like you had kind of said, you alluded to the fact that it's not necessarily the right way is just to throw money at it. Like you've got to get this done. So I think in my experience, though, leadership principles is a lot of times where the bread is buttered, right? So you've got to find those most critical things when building teams, and they've got to be able to handle, have resilience.
I could tell you my personal take on it, and and actually interesting in my background, I left school when I was 15 and just got a job, so I have not read the management book. So I'm intrigued to hear from you if this overlaps.
No, absolutely. I'm one of those guys too. I'm a firm believer in self-education, especially, or on the job training.
Of it, I think, comes down to trusting your team. And that comes out in multiple ways, right? It's tell your team the result you want, not what to do or how to do it. And I think, you've got to let them surprise you. And that works even in a startup, right? It's everyone needs to be creative. Everyone's trying to pick up and solve a question, and there's no resources, right? I was thinking the startup's a bit like we're in a room with 100 spinning plates. We know we can only keep 70 spinning, and I have no time to direct you which ones keep spinning. So you got to just pick. You've got to know the bigger picture. What are we trying to achieve? And you need to be trusted to go gravitate to some place. And that just taking ownership of what you want to do, it really comes in. And then you have to trust the team to do that, right? But in two explicit ways, you've got to give the team the information to know where you're going, right? And so I share quite broadly within my team at ZeroTier, but also my past life, the numbers, right? Our what was revenue last month, right? There's a lot of startups just won't share that with the team. If the team doesn't know, how can you expect them to act like you would want, right? I think, and again, thinking bigger picture, kind of where this conversation's gone, it's painful to me when government laws or rules are passed, well-intentioned, which state the how and not the what, right? The rules should be set with a view to, for example, power needs to be cheaper. Okay, we want power to come down, and we leave it on you, the country, the companies, to work out how that should happen. Here's a framework where you will be, either subsidized or bonus or tax breaks or whatever it is to get power down. Versus, we think there should be an explicit target. What's an example that comes to mind? Is it the CAFE standards for car miles per gallon, right? If you explicitly set this size of car must meet this mile per gallon, you distort a market, right? And people deliver it, but not in the way you want. What did they do? Every manufacturer just increased the size of every car because the mile per gallon amounts target was lower.
Right.
And now it's almost hard to buy a small car, right? And so it was the literal exact opposite of the intent happened, because what the way to get there was explicitly laid out. And if those instead had been framed, it's you hit this multiple gallon target, probably you need to bring in a weight there, right? Some kind of ratio or whatever it is, you will get some kind of bonus. The water will run downhill, and the market will find a way to to improve the efficiency of your car.
Yeah, like the what, not the
even,
how.
Gosh, another example takes me. I lived for a while in Napa Valley back in 2014, 2015. And while I was there, they banned helicopters for the noise. I didn't own a helicopter, and maybe it's like, great, there's no helicopter flying over me, right? People flying over vineyards and helicopters. But even then, it really annoyed me, because where's the incentive now to make a quieter helicopter? There's not. You've just banned all development, right? It's ban flying objects over X decibels. Cool. If you want to invent a flying saucer and it's, and it's quieter than that, then go for it.
Something that's
exactly.
Whisper quiet.
I think there's almost a perfect example. Even better than that standards, right? It's like you said, the how rather than what's your end goal. And
absolutely. Yeah, I love that. So kind of heading towards the end here, I really love to ask, what advice would you give to like a young founder who may feel discouraged by early failures?
Wow. Well, first of all, try again, right? There's no shame in failure.
Yes, exactly. Fail forward, right?
People in general are anxious and afraid of failure and won't try, even if they know they should. And it should be celebrated that you tried. So the very first thing I'd say to any founder is, I'd celebrate you for trying. And if it failed, at least you tried, right? Bravo, right? Try again. The second thing, I think,
as long as you're not completely incompetent,
it's hard in the general sense.
But still, absolutely correct.
And that's the thing. It's like confidence is so key to being a founder, right? And again, if you think about the unicorn founders I know and the way they get stuff done, being supreme, exuding confidence is part of that character trait, right? So I guess we just have to trust that you're also, competent as well as being confident. And then I think most companies fail because of their timing and the market. If you're really good, right? It's a given. You got to be really good at what you do. And you got to have the confidence. You got to try. Then it's about that market and timing it. And in some respects, it's better to be second than first. It's much more common to be ahead of a market, actually. It's about execution far more than the idea. Again, you sometimes see for earlier founders, I spent all my money on a patent. Well, you probably should, right? Or I want you to sign an NDA before I'll share my idea. And it's your idea is completely and totally worthless, right? Scream it from the rooftops. You will win because you execute better. That's all that matters, right? So
I tell my kids that all the time.
You got to be an execution machine, and you want to look for that market that's growing. What is it? A rising tide, right? If you want, your revenue just goes up by a couple of percent every month because the market's going up a couple of percent every month, right? That is so much easier than a shrinking tide. And then maybe adjacent to that in venture, the size of the market in venture matters for everything, right? And again, first early founders seem to see a problem and, oh, that's a big problem. Yeah, I go work on that problem. And usually they're actually wrong. It's like, yeah, it's a big problem. It's $1 billion problem, but that's not really investable with a venture hat on. It's, it's got to be, we're looking for $1 trillion problem. That's what gets us excited. Because if everything goes right, the number at the other end needs to be so astronomically high that it was worth the 9 out of 10 checks I wrote going big TAM, have some confidence, and execute. Yeah.
Yeah, execute. So one of the companies that I'm a founder of, that's our motto is
Love it.
violently execute. I mean,
Okay.
we're a defense company. So it's violently execute. That's like our motto, and that's exactly
biased action. Go do it. Yeah.
So yeah. Yep, absolutely. So just kind of wrapping up, which emerging technologies or trends do you think will redefine industry over the next decade? I know I'm asking you these big old questions, but you know, I think it matters.
I'm going to say AI again, right? But maybe there's a different answer the second time around to AI. And I think it's I always tell especially my junior employees that work for me, who tend to not like AI. I see senior people love AI as tooling and more junior people dislike it. And I see the way they react to it. And I think I think of AI as the intern that memorized the internet. So phenomenally useful, but I really have to check the work it's done. And if you're used to managing people, you're used to that, right? I asked Bob to do something, and I just kind of know Bob's right 95% of the time, and I kind of know where he might have missed something. So, I'll check it. I won't just accept it, and I'll look in that particular area where I know maybe Bob's a bit weak. And that's just kind of what I do all day. And so AI is kind of the same. It's the internet remembers the internet, does some things really well. Sometimes it's stupid wrong because, just graduated from college and had no idea. But hey, I just want to check for that. I'm not offended when they got it wrong. And where I think more junior people see tooling as it's right or it's wrong. It's 100% useful or 0% useful. And they've no experience managing that fuzzy analog people aspects. And so it really stands out and makes them up.
Yeah.
I think.
Isn't that funny how we find older folks are more resilient to AI in its infancy? Probably because a lot of us have children and whatnot, and we see it. And
I think about how that goes out through industries. I mean, it's not even scratched the surface now. It's going to dramatically increase the output of all of us. How I do worry a little about how juniors will gain the experience. Because, again, it can replace juniors for me right now because it kind of is a junior. And a lot of juniors are not in an office anymore every day. So how does the next, cohort of talented individuals come out? I worry about that. I don't worry about mass unemployment. The motor car was invented, industry, the steam engine was invented. There was for sure a lot of churn, right? I'm sure if you were alive and that generation when the steam engine showed up, there would have been an awful lot of churn in where you worked. And certain people, for whatever reason, they're really good at using a site, or they just couldn't get how a steam engine worked. They probably wouldn't maybe been out of work. But in general, more jobs were created. The motor car came along. Yeah, it sucks if you were a farrier or something, but there were less horses in the world, but more jobs were created. The computer came along. Same thing, right? Sucked if you were maybe, a numerical typist or a accountant. Well, I think the job description was computer. But a lot more jobs and economic output was created. This will be exactly the same. There will be some churn and it will probably be speed run. It won't be a generation or two. It will probably be 5 to 10 years. But when we come out the other side, everything will be more efficient and the output of your business will probably be 10x more. And there's a lot of young people who will work out how to get them trained up and, useful and, start their own businesses. But I think it's going to absolutely be a net positive on the world.
Yeah, I think you brought up a really good point too. And it's just the idea that AI is AI, but it has no humanity and it still has to be managed. It still does, regardless. And it'll even tell you that it does. So in turn, you still have that human portion of business and everything that still has to be there. It's just and nothing can replicate that. Not yet anyway, but I don't know if it will ever, but
it will get better and better. Ultimately, how far it will go, I think I'm very skeptical actually of general artificial intelligence. The super brain that takes all wealth.
Yeah.
I don't think so. But hindsight will tell me if I'm right. But
I mean, efficiency is efficiency, but again, it still has to be managed because
and power.
Yeah,
I mean,
there's
so much money is lost every time you ask one of these tools a question right now. That can't go on forever. And again, it ultimately comes down to power.
Yeah, it can.
Right? Will the power get cheap enough?
Yeah, absolutely. Great point. So, kind of wrapping it up here. Last question, other than giving you the floor on something else, is what's your vision for ZeroTier over the next 5-10 years?
Scale, right? I think ZeroTier, the tool.
Yeah. I think it's a great company, just so you know. Me analyzing it, I think it's amazing what you guys are doing.
The tool is remarkably robust and stable, right? It has been around 10 years. It was the first overlay network that predates WireGuard. Some of your listeners may have heard of. Yep. I would say we inspired WireGuard. I think because of it being starting as a project and having that culture before I showed up, it was, you had to know about it. And the people who knew about it are almost religious, right? If you're a network engineer that uses ZeroTier, you bring it with you throughout your whole career. You change company, you bring ZeroTier. And I think a lot of my job is letting the world know that it exists, right? That probably it's hard because the classic startup devices dominate a small niche, right? You can focus on certain customer base, you can focus the messaging, and connectivity is just, it's big, it's huge, right? It's almost too big. So that's where it starts getting tricky.
Absolutely.
But we didn't even get into quantum computing, how it might transform, the world and cryptography. We have some big announcements coming up over the next few months, thinking ahead to that, so kind of really leapfrogging the next generation of connectivity, which, not fully announced, so I didn't dwell on them. But I think, 5 years from now, I would definitely like to be in a lot more devices, a lot more commonly known, and part of the default networking stack for a lot of large companies.
Yeah, absolutely. So, any last words?
No, thank you very much for having me on. It was a great conversation. Nice to branch out from just
I really appreciate
ZeroTier and, cover the venture side and, the economy at large.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, but fortunately, it's my show. So, I mean, we do like to cover national security and stuff like that, but I think all this stuff is. I also think when you look at investment, and I mean, this is how companies get started, right? And if you don't have that, you don't have those things and those people that think about this and get those skills to actually push this economy forward and execute. It's all in vain. None of it matters, right?
You're 100% right, and I'm beating that drum.
And that is absolutely national security.
Requires a robust, growing economy, and that will require cheap power going forward. That's just
absolutely for sure, and secure power. So, well, I thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure to meet you virtually, and anytime you ever you've got anything that you want to talk about, you're welcome to come back whenever. Just reach out and let me know. And
perfect. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yes, Andrew, take care. Thank you so much.
Carry the fire through shadows and storm. Voices of yesterday guiding us on. The echoes of duty, the call we still hear. Building tomorrow with courage, not fear. Stand your ground, keep the watch through the night. Guarding tomorrow where freedom's alive. Through every trial, the truth will the past to horizons unknown. The seeds that we plant are the future we own. Stories of valor, of lessons we've learned, a legacy carried, a torch ever burned. Stand your